Well, welcome to the Week 2 recording for Computer Fundamentals A. And you can see that Week 2 is September 16th through the 20th. And the work for this week, it's all the data types units. We're going to do the whole unit for this week. So, of course, you're watching this recording. You're going to do the write-up. Then you have a quiz to do, another quiz, and the unit exam. So you don't have any word processing or data work or anything like that. It's just going through the lesson and doing a couple of exams and the quiz. So if you need to get caught up on last week's work, this is a good opportunity to do it. A couple things I want to look at. First is the passing plan. So, obviously I would like all students to get high grades, but I know that some of you simply want to pass with 59.5%, so you can get a D, right? Well, if you go to the doc sharing area, there's a passing plan I have. And you can see when you look at it, some of it requires you to get 100%, like on the write-ups, on the lesson, the learning plan, finishing plan. Actually, this class doesn't have a finishing plan, it just has a learning plan. Let me fix that. So this class just has the learning plan, so no finishing plan. So getting back to that, and then takes into account like getting 70% on some of the assignments and quizzes. So if I go to the doc share, and here's Computer Fundamentals Passing Plan. And actually the assignments in this class are less, they have less weight, fewer points than the quizzes and exams. The exams are really the big parts of this class. So if you take a look at this, like right here at the top, you should get 25 out of 25 on the getting started write-up. Should get 25 out of 25 on the learning plan. Week 1 write-up should get 20 out of 20. But then, I put in here like you might only get 40 on these quizzes. You might only get 70 out of 100 on this Unit 1 exam, etc. But here's an example of how you can pass the class with 602 points by not doing everything. Now again, I would like you to do everything, so obviously you should get a higher grade. And if you really look at this, like if it gets down to the end, you only have a couple hours before you have to get all the work turned in, you can go in and do the Unit 4 exam, and at least you can get some of the 100 points. Same with Unit 5, at least you can get some of the 100 points. So at the end, if you're really pressed for time, don't leave any exam or quiz undone. At least you can get a few points for it, right? So anyway, this will help you out, but I hope you are really shooting to get a higher grade than that. So that's the starting plan, or the passing plan. Just wanted to get that cleared up. Remember, I have the lesson recordings down here, the index of the lesson recordings. You can go to those. I also have assignment directions, so I'll post directions for some of the written assignments, the production assignments that you'll do a little bit later on. So let's jump right into the data types unit. So here we are in data types, and we're going to learn all about data. And data, of course, the dictionary defines data as factual information, as measurements or statistics used for the basis of reasoning, discussion, or calculation. Well, that's one way to look at data, but there are many other ways to do it. And what this unit is going to talk about how we gather, use, evaluate, and present data. And this is kind of the launching pad for the documents unit, spreadsheets unit, and presentations unit, because in those 3 units, that's where you're going to actually do the work by using real data and managing data. So this is just the introduction to data. So let's go into section 2. And first let's look at the write-up so we can address the question. So in section 2, what is the definition of data? How's data abstraction related to data? Well, let's see here. So which of these are data? So go ahead and try those. See what you can get right. And check your answers. See how you do on that. See what you know about data. But in this section, we're going to define data and demonstrate understanding ways to use data, compare and contrast different types of data, search and access data on the internet. How do you do that? So the formal definition. So you can see that there are three main pieces of it, but really I would use this one. And that really covers the other two things. So factual information such as statistics used for basis of reasoning, discussion, and calculation. So that's really the definition of what data is, right? It's factual information. So in common terms, data is information, and it may not necessarily be facts. So it could be just other information, but really data is something you use to base a decision on. It's information you use on which you can base a decision. So any similar definition would be fine for that right up question. So data could be all these things. That could all be data. Now data abstraction. Data abstraction is when you view the big picture, but you hide the details and look at the right level. So the more specific the data, the less abstract it becomes. So if we take a look at here, so which is most abstract? So the more specific the data, the less abstract. So as we zoom in, like right here, we're zooming in. So let's see if that's the least abstract. And right here, we're really zoomed out. So let's see if that's the most abstract. Right, so this is the most abstract because it has the less detail. This is the least abstract because it has the most detail. So the way data abstraction is tied to data is that the more specific the data or the more detailed, and that's the less abstract it is. How computers process data? Computers process data in ones and zeros. This is called binary code. So like every time you push a letter, like the letter J on your keyboard, the computer is reading ones and zeros, binary code. And you can go into Wikipedia and other places and learn about binary code. But you can see over here, so the binary code, it's ASCII is the language, and this just talks all about what binary code is and how it was developed and things like that. But it's a string of ones and zeros that stand for letters. That's how the computer interprets what we type in. So we looked at how computers process data. When you use term data, we know what we're referring to, right? We're referring to information that can be used to make decisions. So remember, the more detailed, then that's the less abstract. So if you look at all of this, right here, this is less abstract because this has the most detail, much more detail than United States. Now you have the quiz. You have 3 quizzes in this unit. So right over here, you have the section 2 quiz, but right here are all the quiz previews. So if I click on that, then there's the section 2 quiz preview, there's a section 4 quiz preview, there's no section 3 quiz preview, or there's no section 3 quiz. So you have section 2 quiz, section 4 quiz. Okay, so that was section 2. So let's go back to the write-up. So we answered these 2 questions. Now section 3, what would be the 3 steps to present data? So now let's go on to section 3, presenting data. So we know essentially what data means, but data is not useful unless you can present it to someone or until somebody can actually use the data. Then it's no point in having it unless it can be used. So we're going to look at how we can process and report the results, how we can actually use data. So let's say you're supposed to do an assignment on global warming to some first grade students. So your presentation needs to have some facts, some data, not just be kind of political about arguing for or against global warming. So the first step you need to do is obviously you need to do your research. That's the first thing you need to do. So you find out a bunch of information about global warming. So doing your research is the first step in presenting data. Then you create a chart or some other way to share your data. So that's the second step, create a chart. And the third way, of course, is you put it all together. So you put all this stuff together as part of your presentation. So that's how you present data. Those are the 3 steps in presenting data. So if I get back to the write-up question, what would be the 3 steps used to present data? Well, I just showed you the 3, didn't I? Okay, Section 4, another term for software programs, and list the 3 main applications in Microsoft Office and give 1 example of each. So please make sure you answer both parts of this. So now we're into Section 4. In Section 4, Microsoft Office is what's called a suite of software. And a suite means, a big selection of, big grouping of. So we're going to look at software, Microsoft Office applications, identify the concepts related to office productivity, and look at appropriate applications for the work and data needed. So, first of all, a computer has to have an operating system like Windows XP or Apple operating system, or even on your phone has an operating system and all of that. So that's all operating systems. Then it has different software programs, and those are called applications. So just like your computer has software programs or applications, your phone also has applications or apps, doesn't it? And those apps are software programs. You see down here, operating systems and application. Microsoft was in a suit because a lot of other companies thought that because they had Internet Explorer packaged with Microsoft Office, that it was an unfair advantage. So Microsoft had to make Internet Explorer a standalone program. As we look at Microsoft Office Suite, it has a number of things in it. In the first version of Office, Microsoft actually worked with Apple back in the 80s and early 90s, because there were really no computers running that could run Microsoft. So Apple, the PC computers didn't really come in until after 1989. Apple used the first Microsoft Office suite. Now the components of Microsoft Office, or Open Office or Apple Office, any of those suites, they have main components, and the main components are Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Now on the Class Connect write-up question, what do I say? Give an example of how each is used. Well, Word would be used to, actually let's go to the next slide. Look at this. So Microsoft Word could be used to write a letter or a memo. So those are uses, right? So these are the examples of how it's used. And you can watch this little video for each of these if you want to, just to learn more. Microsoft Excel, and the way it can be used to make a budget. So that would be the answer to that Class Connect write-up question. And you can learn about Excel right here if you want to. Then finally, PowerPoint. Microsoft PowerPoint is used to create presentations. And you can watch this little video to learn more about that. So those are the answers to that Class Connect write-up question. I don't want what it does, but I want an example of what it can do, an example of what you can make using that application. So in summary, we looked at many different applications, and data is used in all those different applications. Microsoft has other pieces called Visio as a drawing program, but Word, Excel, and PowerPoint are the 3 main parts of the Microsoft Office suite. Here's a review. We talked about these things, right? And then, of course, you have the quiz. So if you go down here, there's the Unit 2 Section 4 quiz. And again, the quiz preview is right up here. Okay, back to the write-up. So that's Section 4. Now Section 5. What is one key factor in managing and presenting data? What are 3 key things to include in the introduction to a presentation? So here we are. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about data. So as you go through this, as a teacher, I have to present to many different people: elementary students, middle school students, high school students, even other teachers. And of course, I can't give the same presentation to 3rd graders I would give to teachers. So the most important thing that a person needs to know, what the key factor in managing and presenting data is, you need to know your audience. So as an example, if I'm creating something for my fellow teachers, I'd probably write it at a different level and use different language and illustrations in it than I would if I was turning it into 9th grade computer students or presenting it to them. So knowing your audience is a key factor in managing and presenting data. Once you know your audience, then you can create your presentation around what they need to know. So in this section, we're going to look at what Office applications are appropriate for different audiences and how to create effective presentations. So some of the rules you need to know. Obviously, you need to know your audience before you can even start to put together the data that you want to share. So this is going to go through a couple of scenarios here. So go ahead and do this yourself. So read through this and figure out which is going to be the best way to present to that person. Then you would hit check your answer. So go through that and see what you can figure out in these scenarios. Here's another scenario. Similar thing. Go through it, choose an answer, and then click check answer just to see if you got those right. Scenario 3, same thing. So once you know your audience, then how are you going to keep their attention? What are the things you can do in a presentation to keep their attention? So we're going to go take a look at this. And we're going to look at the importance of the introduction to a presentation. So this is the answer to the Class Connect write-up question. So to be successful on stage, you need to do a number of things in a presentation. First step is use a startling statistic. People like numbers. If they see some really interesting numbers, then they're going to be interested in what you have to say. So use a startling statistic. That's going to be the first thing to do in introduction to a presentation. You also want to use quotes, like use quotes from a great leader or an expert or something, because if you can use quotes, then people are going to understand that, hey, this is going to be some important information. And finally, tell a story. Use the data you're sharing to tell a story. People like hearing stories, so tell a story through the data and with the data. So those are the three things. If I go back here to the write-up, those are the three things to include in the introduction of a presentation. So I just showed you those three things by going right to this link, and I showed you those three things. A little bit more, some mistakes that a presenter can make when you're presenting data. Going way too long, using the wrong visual aids, too much detail or not enough detail, not practicing, and inappropriate humor, bad jokes. That's not the way to do it. Now, humor in presentation is very good. I mean, I use a lot of humor when I do presentations, but it must be appropriate. Like right here, this presenter is going to start telling a joke about two cone heads that were walking down the street. Well, cone heads are in his audience, so that would not be a very good joke, would it? So you need to know your audience. Now, poking fun at yourself. I do that in my presentations at times, but think about how you could poke fun at yourself. What is appropriate and not appropriate. Funny cartoons. In presentations, I try to lead off with a funny cartoon that's related to my topic or something that everybody would understand. People like humor. So if we could do that, then that would be good, right? So this would be a good cartoon if I was doing a talk to lawyers, because many lawyers like to sue people. So this is a joke about suing people for no reason. And here's some additional sources if you want to go find out about how to do quality PowerPoint presentations. There's some different slideshows you can go take a look at. Okay, so you can do some practice. So practicing your presentation would be really important. So read through this and learn a little about practicing a presentation. Okay, so that was section 5, knowing your audience. So let's go back to the write-up. And we answered these questions, didn't we? Now finally, section 6, 4 main risks on the internet for teens, and what are the 4 items that are considered plagiarism. So now we're going to go learn a little bit about the internet. So taking a look at here, the internet it's fundamentally changed people's lives in just a few years. It's the biggest thing since Gutenberg, and of course Gutenberg was the first person that created movable type, so you could print multiple copies of such. And Rupert Murdoch says, no, it's actually the biggest thing since the inventing of writing. Not only print movable type, but since people even began writing. And Larry Page, who started Oracle, one of the richest men in the world, put the world's information at everybody's fingertips, is what he would like to do. So we're going to look at how to use the internet safely and legally, how to use it at school, work, government, at home, different uses for it, demonstrate concepts of trust, privacy, and managing information, and ethical uses of the internet and information you find there. So the internet is incredibly useful, right? And you can socialize, but you really need to play it safe. So let's go look at some of the risks of using the internet. So for the main risks for teenagers is cyberbullying, exposure to inappropriate material, online predators, revealing too much information. You really do not want to reveal much about yourself on the internet, so please don't do that. But you can go ahead, there are lots of things you can explore here to learn more about being safe online. Here's some real life stories that teenagers had. So go and take a look at some of those stories. You may be really surprised at how things can happen to kids online. Now, before the internet, to do research like in 1985 or back in the days when I was in high school and college, if I had to do a research project, the history of airline travel, it would take me forever in a school library or a public library, hours and hours in the library, newspaper articles, books, magazines, all kinds of things. It could take days or weeks. These days, go to Google and type in the history of airline industry, and boom, you have it right now in the Google search engine. I can find all kinds of information. So, Googling things, of course, is where you can find all kinds of information. Just like this says, in 1 or 2 hours, you can probably find more information than Judy would have found in her library in a week. Now, are reliable, what is reliable or not? So, based on the couple scenarios that they just had there, go answer this, see if you can get things right. Now, when using things from the internet, you need to cite your sources. And the word cite for citing your sources is C-I-T-E. But a website is S-I-T-E. So cite is the word citation. Citation means to write something about something. So that's where the word cite comes from. So you have to cite your sources properly. Seek a second opinion if you have to. Now, some sites such as Wikipedia are generally reliable, but many teachers don't want you to use Wikipedia because anybody can add things there. But what has happened over the years is that Wikipedia polices itself. If somebody puts wrong information in there, other people fix it because millions of people access it, right? Now, using photos from the internet. Now, think about that. So, true or false on this question. See what you learn from that. So using copyrighted material. Many people think it's on the internet, it's free to be used. No, just because you can download it doesn't mean you can use it. If copyrighted information belongs to somebody else, you have to have their permission to use that information, except in some extreme cases. And in some cases in education, you don't have to have permission if you use just a little bit of something. Using the internet ethically. Meaning, don't plagiarize, don't steal somebody else's stuff. So let's go look at plagiarism.com, and there's a lot of information you can learn about right here, but it's like citing resources, asking experts, and all that. We're going to go right here to Plagiarism 101, and here's definition of plagiarism, and let's look at, and of course, the definition of plagiarism. Here are the 4 things. This is what plagiarism is: to steal or pass off somebody else's as yours, to use another's information without crediting them or the source you got it from, to steal somebody's literary information or property, present new and original ideas as if they're new and original, but they came from an old source. So it's fraud, stealing other's work, lying about it, etc. So these are essentially the 4 main things that plagiarism is. And if you look down here, here's more about it. This is really more about what plagiarism is. But these 4 up here really summarize what plagiarism is. Then there's different types of plagiarism. So you read through and learn a lot more about what plagiarism is. Okay, review. So we learned in this whole unit, we learned about data. We learned about Microsoft Office in one of the sections. We learned about knowing your audience, doing quality presentations, and finally we learned about internet safety, ethics, plagiarism, etc. So that's this whole unit called data types. Now you have the exam. Right over here is the exam preview, all posted for you. Now what I would suggest is on this exam preview, you print it out. So you can just copy and paste this into word processor, then print it out. Then go back through the lessons to find the answers. Because these exams are worth a lot. This exam is worth 100 points, 10 points per question. So this is worth 10% of your grade. So you need to do well on it. Remember, you do not get to redo exams. So to wrap up, we answered all these questions. So everybody should get full credit on this. And remember, you turn it in, you copy and paste everything. Here are the directions to submit this properly. You do not attach a file. So that's all I have for you for the week 2 recording, all the week 2 work. So you'll zip through that pretty quickly, get last week's work made up if you need to, and then starting with week 3, it's going to be documents, week 4 spreadsheets, week 5 presentations. Each of these units is going to take up 1 week, and then we'll be finished. So thanks for watching. I look forward to your work coming in. Bye, everyone.